What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Claudia Bellafato at the DraftKings studio in Boston. We got a great show for everybody. As always, download, subscribe, rate, review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings network. Fun one coming up today, even though we have been deceived, bamboozled, run amok, and led astray. We'll get to that. But Claudia, tell everyone else what else we got coming up on the show today.
Celtics won another game, but we will get to that. Lots of NFL today. Feeling blue, Giants minicamp update with Pat Leonard. Minicamp major problems. We'll go through some of those headlines, what summer issues are real in the NFL. And looking for the W, Terrika Foster-Brasby will join us to talk this weekend's awesome slate. In the W, Tom Brady also got inducted into the Hall of Fame, Patriots Hall of Fame, I should say, which we'll break down. But yes, it's 3 down, 1 to go for the Boston Celtics. Despite all of that sharp money, guys, I told you yesterday, 85% of that money came in on the Mavs, but the Celtics pulled out, and we can't act like it was dominant throughout the game because the Mavs came out to that big lead in the first. Mavs came back from 21 down with 10 to go. But, Senior, I know you're very hot on this one topic, so let's get to this first. Luka fouls out with 4:12 to go in a 93-90 Game 3 where they needed this win. How do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, listen, he needs to stop, number one. I mean, he just needs to stop with the complaining. But listen, he's a great player. We know he's a great player. He's going to continue to be a great player. He's a defensive liability right now. The teams are going right at him and right around him, forcing help right away because he can't guard anybody. And then when he sits there and complains, there's 4-on-5 going back the other way, which makes it pretty damn difficult. So while he's a great player and there's no way they'd be where they are, it's kind of like the double-edged sword. You have to take this with that, right? You know exactly who he is. You know this isn't going to stop, even though teammates, coaches have somewhat pleaded with him to say, basically, knock it off, and he just won't. 4 fouls, Mike, in the fourth quarter. 4 fouls in the fourth quarter, as Claudia mentioned, fouled out with about 4 minutes ago in a close game that what ebbs and flows from the Dallas big lead to a Boston huge lead to Dallas coming back and making it a game, and then the best player on both teams is sitting on the bench, watching the rest of this game.
Yeah, although for the majority of this game, didn't look like the best player on both teams. This looks like a guy that was running out of gas, was frustrated, and knew it. The entire game, he looked like a cherry tomato, and it led to him fouling out with 4 minutes left and getting cooked by Brian Windhorst on SportsCenter later on that night because, Dad, it's going to have to change if they're going to get over the hump, right? Luka's always going to have that fire, but it can't be to the detriment of himself and his team. I think this reeked of a guy that knew it was over. And we're going to listen to sound coming up of Luka Doncic saying that it's not over, but that looked like a guy that very much felt the quicksand beneath his feet, who hadn't been to this stage and gone through this kind of process with this kind of pressure on him from the outside. And he got a little bit of relief last night. We talked about Kyrie Irving and how he needed to come out and have a big game, and he did. Kyrie Irving, almost from the jump, was getting to the lane better. He finally broke his cold streak from shooting beyond the arc, but ultimately, the Boston Celtics were able to force the Dallas Mavericks into being an iso ball dominant team that didn't involve hardly anyone not named Luka and Kyrie. And so, Dad, all the frustration stemming from that, and I'm sure the injuries, leads to the version of Luka that we saw most often last night. Palms up and beat red, wondering where the hell it all went wrong.
Yeah, what was it, 55, I think, of the 86 shots were Kyrie and Luka. Because Kyrie, listen, we had said Kyrie's got to come play. 20 points in the first half. So he was doing that. It's a 1-point game at halftime. So we're like, okay, we're getting Kyrie, we're getting some contributions, but it's basically the two stars on each team. I mentioned 55, 56 shots for the two for Dallas, and for Tatum and Brown, I believe it was 48 shots. I think between the two of them, 48 shots. So stars were taking over, but at the end of the day, the role players for Boston are just doing a better job, right? Their defense is better, their passing is better, movement of the ball is better. They're just a better team. It's going to be most likely the 10th sweep in NBA Finals history coming up here. But that's what we're going to do when we put a bow on this. We're going to crown the Boston Celtics, and we're going to talk about Luka and saying, okay, if this team is ever going to get over the hump what do you need to do from a player standpoint? Because he's not the only player that whines in the league, right? But it just gets magnified with every level that you go up, and now it's the NBA Finals. And you're right, that picture of his face red and his palms up seems to be every friggin' possession. And I gotta imagine even teammates knowing how great he is and knowing we're nowhere near where we are without this guy. At some point, you just kind of roll your eyes and shake your head and say enough.
Yeah, well, and I mean, the other part with Luka that people took offense to last night was also the defensive effort. Doris Burke took him to task for that. That was what I referenced with Brian Windhorst also. Right. Dan, I'm a little more sympathetic to that just because this is a guy that we know has been banged up basically this entire postseason run and playing through it, and for large stretches has had to be their only source of offense. He was the only thing putting the ball in the basket for the Dallas Mavericks in Game 1 and Game 2 of this series on the road, trying to keep them in that. And even Jason Kidd, his head coach, acknowledged, yeah, we need more defensive effort from him, but we've also got to do a good job of making sure we hide him and give him some chance to rest on that end of the court. Now, last night is a little bit less excusable because he did get offensive relief last night. There were possessions where Kyrie took the reins and he got to go over onto the side and serve energy on that side because defensively he just looked flat out lost. And they made sure, like a smart team should, and you have to credit certainly Joe Mazzulla for the way that they structured their attack. They were just getting Luka into as many pick and roll situations as they possibly could. They were driving and then they were doing your favorite thing in the world, Dad, kicking back out to the perimeter and watching that ball loop around to an open shooter or the Boston Celtics. I mean, Xavier freaking Tillman hit a three-pointer last night. The guy played in 6 playoff games this postseason, hadn't played in the NBA Finals till this game, and even he knocked down a 3, his first one of the postseason, and probably his first one in a good long time there. So that's how well it was working there structurally for them, and it all started with the fact that no one had to worry about Luka stopping them as the primary defender, which had been an area he had improved the back half of this season.
Yeah, he had improved. That team had improved, but I just think everything catches up, right? Everything is relying on Luka. He's just wearing down. He's just flat out wearing down. And we can sit here and say, as former athletes, it's a finals. You got to find a way, which you do. But, the body is the body. And, at times you're going to get worn down when so much is asked of you. We had only 1 of 7 from 3, so he wasn't hitting the deep ball either. You just you wonder the toll it's taking on his body, but I'll sit there also and say, don't care. You're out there. You got to play. That's just the way it is. Sometimes, though, it's not an excuse. It's a reason. I don't know. Does he need more help than Kyrie? We always talked about, hey, at the trade deadline, what they did, and we liked those guys. Who are we putting this on? Is it the complete team effort we're putting it on? Is the fact that Boston is just so much of a better team right now?
Boston has an infinitely better roster than the Dallas Mavericks. Full stop. It's been the sell for this Boston Celtics team. And as someone that played in a championship game against an infinitely better roster than the one that I was on, what the Dallas Mavericks are experiencing right now is what I call the championship quicksand. Because when you're the lesser talented team, you only got so many chances early on in the game for our sport or in the series for this sport to go out there and steal something to give you enough confidence to go there and be able to contend against a better team like that. But you're seeing right now with the Mavs, that frustration, a lot of their role players unsure of how to fit into the puzzle when all of a sudden their stars go hero ball and change up the way that they had been winning things through the course of the postseason. We talked about it, 54 lobs coming in, grossly outpacing anybody else in the postseason where guys like Gafford and Likely are getting in there. And we watched them missing chippies like that last night in a way that was uncharacteristic because right now this team looks shook. And at this point, it's over. Whether or not, maybe they managed to win game 4 at home or something like that, Claudia, could certainly be possible, but this series is impossibly over, and everyone in Boston's going to get ready to celebrate. Wherever that weird little kid was with the sign, he should come back out of hiding and get ready to go because it's his time to shine.
He was in hibernation, but yes, he's coming out, don't worry. I go back to what everyone sort of wanted to give Boston heat for and Joe Mazzulla heat for, and that was the fact that Boston took too many threes, and you can't win if you're not having a hot night with the threes. Well, the Mavs outplayed them in the paint every single game so far in this series, and the reason Boston is winning is because they've made 27 more threes than they have. So, yes, they sort of have lived and died by the three, but especially when Porzingis was out, in my mind, I said that's okay. They had a poor shooting night in Game 2, and they still beat the Mavs. So I think that's what it really comes down to. As the Celtics just have the better team and the deeper team, but also the Mavs don't really have a hot three-point shooter. It's supposed to be Kyrie, right? But he was dead quiet in this series. So the Mavs were never going to win this. And I do want to bring in, we can get to the sound, but also the fact that a gentleman sweep right now is plus 175. So if you think the Mavs do somehow get one, if Boston has an off shooting night, if Porzingis doesn't go and Kyrie and Luka get it going, that is what you want to bet. You want to bet the gentleman sweep at plus 175 because it's a pick 'em right now. The Mavs, a 1-point favorite, but it's minus 110 on both sides for the money line. So if you think the Mavs get one, I know, GoJo, you said it's ultimately over, but if there's some sort of chance that the Mavs get one, plus 175, not a terrible price for a gentleman sweep. Do we see any reality of that happening, or do we think that's just over, GoJo?
I think it's over. I'm done. I've been tricked and bamboozled long enough into believing in this Dallas Mavericks team. I'm done and I'm off the sauce, which probably means if you're betting this, fade me. You'll get that 5 games that you want in the gentleman sweep and collect a little bit of scratch on top of that. But no, Dad, I think this one is good and done and over. I think this Boston Celtics team, who's been knocking on the door for the long time, we talk about the opposite of that quicksand feeling. The maturity of experience this Boston core has had, including on this final stage. I think these guys understand, hey, let's just go and get this done and get this long-awaited relief of celebration started.
And the way to get it done is just go right at Luka, right? When you have the ball, go right at Luka. Get him frustrated early. Maybe he gets a couple fouls early, he gets whining early, and it's just it. It's going to be over because outside of Kyrie, there's nobody else that's going to pick up the slack. I always say this about closeout games is take the wind out of their sails. They're 4 times we've seen, nobody has ever come back 3-zip. 4 times we've seen teams go back to actually force a game 7 to make it interesting. And that's not happening here. And the way it's not happening is Boston start nailing threes early, or who knows, it may be a back and forth game like this, big lead, close game, big lead the other way, close game at the end. Who knows? But the way would be to get Luka frustrated, because we always did that. I mean, you know that, Mike. You found a guy on the field who was that guy who you would try and frustrate and get that penalty from, get him maybe out of his game. And I guess you can't say this is out of Luka's game. This is Luka's game, complaining all the time. And I know a lot of people are going to do this. We still can't lose sight of the fact that the dude is one of the best players in the league, but that doesn't mean you don't have some negative parts. And this is a negative part, and this is something Boston should go right after and exploit.
I actually don't think his emotions are going to be an issue in Game 4. I really don't, because we've seen in this postseason run, when he's had bad outings where it's become the story, he's been able to course correct. He's self-aware enough to be able to do that, and I'm sure that's going to get harped on a lot by Jason Kidd and everybody else. The thing is, though, all the same old Boston stuff that we had lurking in the background. I mean, you look at this game. The Mavs got out to a hot start at the beginning. Kyrie and them are getting to the lane. Claudia mentioned it. No Kristaps Porzingis. Showed up big time early on in this game. The lane was open for the taking, and the Dallas Mavericks exploited that for a bit. And then the Celtics made some changes, and defensively they put guards down in the dunker spot to throw off the lob situation. They did all this stuff schematically that Joe Mazzulla deserves a lot of credit for, and they were able to walk them back down. Fourth quarter, they get out to this big lead, and all of a sudden the Mavs go on a huge run and get it to a 3-point game. And they managed to survive that in crunch time, due in large part to Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown both showing up in certain critical moments. And so they've been able to continue to bank moments where they build up all this confidence in situations that had snake bitten them before. And so now if you're the Boston Celtics riding into Game 4, going into every game, we used to do, the coaching staff used to put together a highlight tape of all our best plays. They call it mental edge. They wanted you to see yourself succeeding in a bunch of spots that you'd already performed in. Big time situations, big time games. The Boston Celtics have a highlight reel of that a mile wide now, and it's just coming from the last game here on the road that they can point to and say, this is what we're capable of. No Kristaps. We made the adjustment. Plenty of guys stepped up in that process. And our 2 stars, and Dad, as we look at the way that we're going to tie the bow on this after the series, the Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown conversation that's run rampant. I think Jaylen Brown's going to end up being your finals MVP. I just think defensively, what he's offered you as a primary defender, certainly offensively, when they've needed a bucket going down towards the basket, Claudia, he's been the aggressor. He's gotten hot from 3. The series changed last night, and the game changed last night, and I've seen the meme online. When Jason Tatum realized how freaking big he is and the fact that he can go get his down low almost any time and be an incredible matchup nightmare for everybody, this Celtics team supernovas. And he realized that last night. But those moments are a little bit fewer and further between than we would like. And Jaylen Brown has been the much more consistent force in my mind. So he would be my pick for finals MVP right now.
Well, You're not alone, GoJo. So let me swing this and see what your take is, because Jaylen Brown is now minus 280. He is the favorite. No more plus money. So if you missed it, don't bet it now. Jason Tatum, though, plus 250. GoJo just talked about him getting big. Seemed to have a little bit more confidence here, a little bit more of a rhythm. Of course, the points were there for him. 31, 6, and 5 on the night. Plus 250. Is there any way he comes out in this game 4? Maybe if it goes game 5, goes absolutely berserk, Brown stays quiet, that he wins this, or is it Brown's award?
I think it's Brown's award. Now, if it goes 5 and he has 2 monster games, and you said the key thing there, Jaylen Brown would have to be more quiet. If Jaylen Brown just keeps playing the way he's playing, he's going to be the MVP. So you're right. If you didn't bet Jaylen on the plus side, you missed it, because he's the favorite now, and I think he's going to win it. I don't think, because I think it's either going to be a sweep or 5 games. I'd probably lean toward a sweep, and I just don't think Jaylen Brown's going to have that off of a game, or Tatum that big of a game, where it's going to switch what we have going now from this standpoint 3 games in. And again, I as a former defensive guy, I want to give credit to the defense. This is a Dallas team that's averaged 100 in the regular season, averaged 117 points a game. They haven't broken 100 once in this series. Not one time. I think it was 89, 98, 99. So kudos to, Boston's defense and the way they just absolutely hound you.
Yeah, I mean, Derek White, Drew Holiday, who didn't stuff the stat sheet scoring last night the way that he had in the first couple of games, but was still an absolute nightmare. One of the many bodies they got to throw at him. I will say, too, we've talked so much about all these parts. Joe Mazzulla, the Boston Celtics head coach, while he is very weird, and every quote that comes out from him seems like a quote that I think someone said if you fed a college football coach into an AI, it would give you Joe Mazzulla. Here he was after the game last night talking about God knows what.
Yeah, I mean, just stick to the things that we've been doing. I mean, have an understanding. I think, we were down 13. I expected that. We were down 1.5. I expected that. So you got to expect the expected. You got to understand that, we're just as vulnerable, if not more vulnerable than they are. And we have to play that way. And so as long as we have that mindset, when you understand that you're vulnerable and your back's against the wall, you got to fight. And so that's the mindset that we have to have.
Seeing that man in a championship parade setting is going to be incredible meme fodder, because you want to talk about that someone that seems so uncomfortable with the concept of joy. It is Joe Mazzulla. That being said, Dad, that little supercomputer with hair right there managed to put together some really impressive game plans, the defensive strategies for this team, all the above. You have to give him credit where it's due. He coached his ass off in this series, and he did it, listen, with the objectively better team. This is always, like most games, still a Jimmy's and Joe's outfit, but from what he had to do with the coaching standpoint, Joe Mazzulla held up his end of the bargain.
Bottom line is they had the better team in every series, and I know that you'll harp on outside of the finals that the best player on the other teams have gotten hurt, but and also the bottom line is they're going to hold up the trophy, and they have a team that's not going anywhere, right? So we look at the way we talked a lot about as we're talking about where head coaches are going to land, how you build teams in the NBA now. And you look at what Boston has, and they have it down pretty well, and a team that's kind of with the window still open for them in place to continue this.
Yeah, once the finals ends, we can talk about the fact that overall this playoffs has been pretty lackluster in terms of the product, outside of a couple series here and there that gave us some good stuff. This finals you mentioned would be just the 10th sweep potentially, which isn't a ringing endorsement of how competitive this was. And of course, Boston's road through the Eastern Conference is going to be heavily scrutinized because every team was missing their star player until now for some large portion of the series. But the bottom line is the Boston Celtics have been a dominant force all year long, and every step of the way, even again last night without one of their great players, and one of the big differences from last year to this year in Kristaps Porzingis, they have gone out and executed in the face of every challenge thrown at them and have a commanding 3-0 lead right now due the Boston Celtics. So as we get ready for duck boats and championship parades and whatnot there, coming up next, Boston already warming up and getting their reps in last night. They brought Tom Brady back and decided they were going to have a Hall of Fame ceremony in June. We'll explain why the hell this happened next here on GoJo Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. The GOAT got inducted into the Patriots Hall of Fame last night. He got his Jay-Z introduction, the song we all heard when he came out of the tunnel, but Jay-Z was actually there, so that was cool. He got the news that he's getting a 12-foot statue that should be revealed this upcoming season. And the most important news, number 12, he learned, is going to be retired, according to Robert Kraft.
There is only one iconic number that will always represent Tom Brady. And tonight, I promise that it will never be worn again, as the number 12 is now officially retired.
Very cool moment, one of many. Brady, pretty emotional throughout the night. He ended it very emphatically saying, I am Tom Brady, I am a Patriot. He alluded to Belichick, spoke to him and said, it wasn't me, it wasn't you, it was us. A beautiful night if you ask me, but I'm a Patriots fan lifelong. So GoJo, I don't know, is this as beautiful as it was for you guys as it was for me?
Nope, absolutely not. I don't think anyone outside of New England actually cared about this, but
come on.
This is something that Dad, if we're looking for comps elsewhere or this idea of this becoming a trend, I doubt we're going to see that. There are other franchises that have all-time great players that'll mean a lot to the organization, but I don't know if any one singular player that we've got right now could pack 60,000 people into a stadium in the middle of June for this. This is a great opportunity for Robert Kraft and the organization to sell a bunch of tickets during the offseason and get good use out of the stadium outside of the concerts coming in there, and to celebrate Tom Brady after the roast and all of the back and forth that we saw there. Controlled environment for them, great for your fan base. Like Claudia said, if you're a Patriot fan and you got to go to that, you got to see some of your all-time favorite players up there on the stage. You got to see Tom Brady, the guy that helped with Bill Belichick change so much of the modern course of your franchise's history. It is smart business by the team, absolutely. But no one outside of that building or that town should care.
No, I didn't watch it. I'm sure people watched it. Listen, Tom Brady is going to go down as the greatest of all time. And you're right, Mike. I'm trying to think in any sport another player that will garner that kind of attention for it. But it was an incredible career, a career that has not been done before. And I think the first thing that he was happy about that Kevin Hart didn't come out, it was the MC, and we started the roast all over again. He had PTSD about. I mean, you did have
Bill Burr as the MC of that, so it's not like it was that far off.
I know, exactly. It's just a shame that the timing worked out on Game 3 of the Celtics playing. It's kind of a scheduling thing. Obviously, it's been scheduled for a while. But it was a great celebration, a celebration that you knew was coming. But I'm with you. I don't know where we'll see that again in any sport, to load up a stadium like that. Or
you'd be able to do that probably with LeBron James going back to Cleveland when it's all said and done for him. I think obviously the late Kobe Bryant, if he had still been with us, you could have pulled this off at Staples Center with Kobe Bryant. Absolutely. If you wanted to bring him back and celebrate him in that same way. So I think there are a couple of athletes like that. Baseball doesn't come to mind right this second, but there's a couple there that could pull this off, Dad. And, maybe you do wonder because, again, like I said, there is an economic portion of this that I think a lot of those franchises would also find pretty appealing to come back and do. And we know players got egos. Who doesn't love having everyone come up there and talk about how great they are, right? And to not have to do it, like you said, in a roast setting where you got to worry about your kids getting brought into it.
Yeah. I agree about LeBron going back to Cleveland because he did get him that title to fill an arena. Tom filled a stadium. I can't think of another football. Aaron Rodgers is not going to get this by any stretch, even though he's going to walk in as a first ballot Hall of Famer. We know that's not going to. I'm just thinking of some of the.
That's about it.
Yeah, some of the next, Hall of Fame players that are on the verge of retirement. Aaron would be in that category. Yeah, I can't think of anyone outside of LeBron that would get that kind of a show somewhere. Well deserved, and he moves on, and we keep celebrating him. But time marches on, right? We have the next quarterback of the New England Patriots ready to go. We've already tried that once, and it's failed since Tom has left. So we keep marching on and get to hear him in a booth now. But a nice ceremony.
So, Claudia, we've got the time marching on, as Dad said. We're coming off the failed Mac Jones experiment in New England that tried to get the following act after Tom Brady into that quarterback chair in Foxborough. And now we're back at it again, and I wanted to know how concerned you and Patriots fans were coming off the glow of this likely Celtics championship about this upcoming season. With that in mind, Chris Sims puts out his quarterbacks list, and Drake Maye's not on there. Is people freaking out yet in New England?
No, and I don't think really anyone's looking at that Chris Sims list and expecting Drake Maye necessarily to be on there. There are a lot of rookies. I think it makes sense. Like, Brissett's on there because we've seen Brissett play. We knew the reason that the Patriots brought him in because he's a veteran presence. He's been a solid quarterback. Is he the franchise quarterback, the quarterback of the future? Of course not. And a lot of people, including Belichick, have been vocal about issues surrounding Drake Maye. And then the other side of it is, he's looked great so far in camp. As fans, if you're asking me as fans, I don't think anyone's looking into this. They're just excited to have somebody other than Mac Jones. No disrespect to Mac Jones, but that chapter should have been over the second it started, really, in the second year of his career in New England. So I think Patriots fans are just happy to have a new face, as similar as Drake Maye and Mac Jones do seem to be. We'll see what happens. I think we have faith in a quarterback that can throw the ball downfield, and a coach that seems to believe in that quarterback, and we didn't really have that the last 2 years.
So the list that Chris Sims put out, one of the categories that he would have fallen in was ready rookies, and he had Michael Penix Jr., Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, and J.J. McCarthy. I don't know why Will Levis got thrown into that. It's his second year in there, so maybe just a mistake on the graphic. But, Dad, I understand Bo Nix played a lot more football. I understand Jaden Daniels won the Heisman, but this is definitely your pre-draft things also baked into this. Because for Drake Maye so far, whatever you've seen out of the offseason program, it can hardly be indicative of all too much. I don't know. I still think he's a lot more game ready than he's getting credit for in here. I absolutely would have had him above a couple of these rookies there for sure. Bo Nix, and in my mind, J.J. McCarthy, even though J.J.'s in a better situation. But hell, if you want to use the offseason as a proxy, you got J.J. McCarthy not walking into training camp with the starting job in hand right now. That seems to be pretty firm, the idea in Minnesota that it could not be him starting day one for this team. So the fact that would be a slight against Drake Maye seems sort of silly to me. I think he's got really good potential, Dad. It's just all going to be, do the weapons around him develop enough? There's still not a lot in the arsenal in that receiver room. They drafted Jalen Polk out of Washington, who I like, but who's probably not a true number one receiver in the NFL. So they're still going to have to go make chicken salad out of chicken you-know-what. Yeah. And if Jacoby Brissett's got to be the one to do that for a while, then so be it. He's been a great adult in the room for a lot of franchises, and coming back to one he already knows pretty well, he can do that again while you take your time with a guy that you need to hit on now.
Yeah, I'm with you on these ratings early on. You're still rating it on the draft, right? You really have nothing to go on. Going on the off-season program or a practice of minicamp would be somewhat ridiculous to do. So, we'll wait and see. And he won't be the only one. I doubt if he doesn't start, right? We know that Michael Penix Jr. is not going to start. We don't know if Bo Nix is going to start in Denver either, with a three-headed quarterback competition going on there. And J.J. McCarthy, at this point, even Kevin O'Connell said it's Sam Darnold. We have time to decide that. So any of these lists early on like this, I just kind of look, especially when there's rookies involved, we have zero idea. We're still basing it all off what they did in college before they even stepped field on the pro circuit.
and a couple of mic'd up off-season organized team activities that we've gotten a chance to hear their voices and watch them bounce around the field and try and take a million different things from all that. So the bottom line is, for the Patriots, they got to enjoy a wonderful night celebrating Tom Brady, and now they do get to look cautiously at their future, which for the first time doesn't have Bill Belichick in 2 decades, and what Gerard Mayo's team's going to look like. Will the defense drop off at all? Will guys like Christian Gonzalez, who got hurt last year, pick up and return to same form? There's a lot of uncertainty for the first time in a long time in Foxborough on both the playing front and the coaching front, which in some ways should make it exciting. This is an exciting opportunity to finally turn the whole page instead of the half measure that you got over the last couple of years, to finally see if this franchise can win a totally different way than you got used to for quite some time. Coming up next, we'll take a look at who's off and running already at the U.S. Open. Spoiler alert, people are getting ready for roars. Next on GoJo and Golic.
We're back here on GoJo and Golic to talk some golf. The U.S. Open officially underway, and it's early, but we're going to be dramatic and overanalyze here because, yes, Tiger Woods is 100 people through 3, but right now Logan McAllister leading the way. And like I said, it's early, senior, but can we get a little excited? Because yesterday we were all saying he's not going to make the cut. I'll check the odds in a second to see if they've changed at all, but that's what we do with golf. We get dramatic early.
Yes, yes, and it's Tiger. Let's get excited. I think there's only 8 players right now, I think, that are under par. I think 51 right in that area out on the course. Only 8 are under par at this point, even though it's early on, and Tiger's one of them. So yes, we rejoice that every time Tiger is out on the course. We want Tiger to be up there at least by the front page, or let's first off say making the cut and then going from there. We had talked about it. Andy North, had talked about the course fits him. It's flatter. The weather's going to fit him a little better. He's been practicing, obviously, getting ready for this. So maybe it times up right. not to win it, even though he thinks he could win it. Wouldn't that be something to be in contention for that? But to be there on the weekend and give us that Tiger watch that we all dig.
I just think it's basically now a good excuse for everybody why your workplace productivity is dipped today. I wish we could measure over the years how many work days Tiger Woods himself has tanked nationwide as he's gotten started in the early going of a round like this, because you have so many people with a window open on their laptop or a side eye on their television trying to just see. I just want to see something. There's not like I expect anything at this point, but I just want to see something, Dad. As for the actual tournament overall, this is going to be really interesting, the overlying theme of this weekend, because I saw Alan Shipnick the other day, the golf writer, tweeting out that a prominent agent who has clients on both tours mentioned that a draft agreement was signed yesterday between the PGA Tour Enterprises and PIF to finalize the Saudi investment in the tour. So we've talked about this overall, especially at the major championships, because you can have the live golfers there, whether it's guys that qualified in opens or guys that still have the exemptions from past championships won that can play in these tournaments. So we get the storylines with these guys again. But now, as there's been talk this week from the U.S. Open about adding more ways for the guys on the LIV Tour to qualify, or just this idea that the deal that we've heard about now for what feels like a year and a half or so, Dad, between these two sides may actually be close to coming to fruition, and how much this would change golf, because for all the dominance of Scottie Scheffler that we've talked about here, we've been doing golf for a while without some of the characters. Brooks Koepka, who when he was healthy and got healthy again going back over to the LIV Tour, has been one of the most charismatic guys on the tour. Bryson DeChambeau was in that playoff, almost was one stroke away from the playoff with Xander Schauffele, and was winning the crowd not too long ago as well at the Players. So these are compelling characters in the sport of golf that at this juncture right now, they could absolutely use, as we've got another one of the dominant players starting to step up to the mantle in Scottie Scheffler, and it seems like we might be getting close to that. So I'm sure these guys are going to get asked a ton about that throughout the course of the week.
Well, they are, and the coverage is starting to include more live players. That was always a question when you got to the majors. How much would you prominently display the live players? The Golf Channel on set has had Bryson DeChambeau, has had Cam Smith, has had Martin Keimer. They haven't done that in a little while. Those are the live players. Now, coming on and talking golf, and I do think a lot of it is the fact that this agreement was close then, and now the reports are it's going to be signed. I think what you're going to get after this, Mike, because, listen, guys are only human. At some point, you're going to get the PGA guys after this deal is done and everybody's back, golfing. And now I don't know. I don't know what it is, because LIV still has their tour going on. I have no idea what this means. But at some point, they'll be back working together, supposedly. And now the PGA players are just going to look at the LIV players and say, everything's hunky-dory again, and those guys all made millions and tens and millions and hundreds of millions of dollars that we didn't have a chance to make.
I think at this point, though, it seems like every golfer that we've talked to, every person around golf that we've talked to, has made it sound like that for so many of those guys who had friends that went over on that tour, who have played in majors with those guys since then, it sounds for the most part, Dad, like it's water under the bridge at this point. Like a lot of them understood the decision got made. A lot of them had the chance to make that decision. And they've also had plenty of time now to contend with, yes, those guys are rich in a way that they will never be at this point. And so when they get back on the tour, I think for a lot of them, and we've seen this is the kind of prevailing sentiment both from the LIV crowd and some guys from the PGA Tour, that, hey, we just need to be united again so that more people keep watching golf.
Maybe I said it wrong. I don't think they're going to be mad at them. That's not what I meant at all. I think they're just going to be within themselves saying, damn, those guys got a lot of money and now everything's back to normal. And I never got a piece of that. No, I do think all the relationships are going to be fine. Everything's going to be back to somewhat normal. But again, we don't know what the details are. We don't know if they'll be back together outside of the majors. We don't know yet. Because the LIV Tour is still going on. So we have zero idea what any details are in this thing. So while we all know from the player side, I don't know, outside of Rory, who spoke up a lot, how much animosity there was. There certainly was a lot in the beginning and how quickly that kind of waned. But we don't know any details of this at all, if it is truly going to bring the LIV players back to the PGA. So now all the best players in the world are playing basically every week or every other week.
Because that does make you wonder, for a guy like Scottie Scheffler, would all of a sudden having a lot of these guys back around the tour week in and week out, push him in a way that's a bit different, maybe put a dent in the hide of what has been dominance for him so far in this run in this season. So I think from that standpoint, and again, I like the characters involved. So much of the phenomenon around Full Swing was about taking golf and further developing characters around the sport in a way that we've seen for so many others. These guys that for sometimes behind those ropes inside the courts have felt, even in a sport that doesn't have helmets, a little less accessible than some of their peers, building up those characters and having people that are exciting around the sport. I think seeing that, and especially like I go back to like Bryson DeChambeau was not a guy I've very much ever found likable before the lead up to that tournament, where all of a sudden we had the shots going back and forth between Schauffele and him when things might have worked out. And you felt that groundswell of support for him. And now you do wonder if a guy like that, who seems to have made real strides both as a player and a person, and some others, would be a good influx of talent at the right time for the game of golf to help a lot of these things get pushed further forward.
Yeah, I agree. And I agree about your point. If the live players are back on the PGA Tour, that is more competition for Scottie Scheffler. Listen, he's the number one player in the world, deserves to be the number one player in the world. It's not like he didn't win tournaments before those guys went to live. So he has done that, and he's proven what a great player he is. And I'll say again, it's not like if this was signed, live is dissolved and all those guys are back on the PGA Tour. We have zero idea of what's happening. But at least for this week, for the rest, these next 3.5 days or 4 days of this tournament, we can enjoy all the best players in the world being together in a U.S. Open at a very difficult golf course to see what happens.
As we mentioned, speaking of the live players, there are 12 live players on the field this week, which includes past U.S. Open champions Brooks Koepka, Dustin Johnson, Bryson DeChambeau, and Martin Kamer. Jon Rahm, the 2021 U.S. Open winner at Torrey Pines, as we mentioned yesterday, unfortunately had to pull out because of that left foot injury where we saw him giving away toes for free on the internet. So still plenty of those guys, like we mentioned, who have experience at this particular tournament, albeit not all of them at this particular course here, going to have a chance to go out here today. So, Dad, I would look at that. I mean, Bryson DeChambeau and Brooks Koepka are both the highest up on the odds list as far as the guys from the Live Tour. Brooks right now 6th down on the list of odds. Bryson DeChambeau, I believe, 8th down there on the list of odds, and a lot of those fluctuating here. Claudia, you got an update on that too?
Well, I just want to say too, there's a live special. So if you go to the DraftKings Sportsbook, instead of looking at the full list, there's a live special specifically. So DeChambeau is the favorite at 4-1, Koepka plus 450, Cameron Smith at 6-1. So instead of having to try and find them with that big long list, if you want to go live specific, you can look there.
Yeah, DeChambeau seems to be the guy.
Yeah, I would say so. Go out there and hit bombs as he's wont to do. So you can check out the live special on the DraftKings Sportsbook. You can check out Tiger Woods as he's teeing off in the early going here. And we'll all wait and see how it gets started here as the third major of the season for the PGA gets ready and gets going. Coming up next, though, we talked about it a little bit the other day with the news of Darren Waller's retirement in the New York Giants locker room, how that affects the upcoming season, and what we can realistically expect for Daniel Jones in what feels like the final year of his deal and that guaranteed money, now that he's got a true weapon in that offense. Next on GoJo and Golic. GoJo Golic, Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Claudia Bellafato here. And as we keep our eyes toward the 2024 NFL season, let's talk some New York Giants football. We're delighted to bring in Pat Leonard, who you can check out covering the Giants for the New York Daily News, as well as on his Talkin' Ball with Pat Leonard podcast, which you can find over on the PL on NFL YouTube channel that he's got here, doing a great job with that as always. Pat, good morning. How you doing?
Mike, doing great. You guys set a standard in this business, so I'm thrilled to be on with you.
No, man, we're pumped to have you here, and we're pumped to talk about, I think, one of the more interesting teams in the NFC East this year, Pat. And we know for the Giants, it's going to start with the quarterback. So coming off minicamp, going into a pivotal year for Daniel Jones, where they finally added a weapon for him. What is the feeling around the building for the Giants quarterback, hopefully of the future still?
Yeah, now or never for Daniel Jones. He'll be the first one to tell you that. He's shown a little bit of an edge in the spring, even though he hasn't been doing full team 11-on-11 drills. But even just the way that he talked about watching the draft, being well aware that they might end up going up, trading up, getting a quarterback like Drake Maye and trying to replace him. I mean, the owner, John Mara, was on the record saying, why not draft a quarterback, have him compete with Daniel and let the best man win? So Jones knows the balance. He knows the Giants paid him, but he also knows that they're looking with one eye at down the road who is going to possibly replace him if he doesn't get it done. And he also was the first one who said he didn't play well enough last season. Obviously, there were a lot of factors outside of his control, though, that contributed to that as well. So Drew Lock spent the entire spring running the first team offense. Very interesting dynamic here. Although the Giants continue to say that when training camp starts, it'll be Daniel Jones running the first team offense. And he said he'll be ready for day one of camp in late July.
So he said he'll be ready. How about who he's going to throw to? I mean, where are the weapons for him? I know you grab Malik Neighbors in the draft is sitting at the 6th slot. The tight end position, Waller, while not the greatest, still was somewhat productive for the Giants. So where is the tight end position? So what does Daniel Jones have to throw to?
No, I think you break that down very well, because the bottom line is, I would say this. I watched Malik Neighbors all spring. Looks like he could be a star. I mean, there were days where he absolutely dominated. Nobody could guard him, scoring multiple touchdowns and all that. You can even move him from the slot to outside. He could play anywhere. The problem is they didn't add him on top of great elite weapons like Saquon Barkley and Darren Waller. They just replaced them. Barkley goes to the Eagles, Waller retires. And so if you're Daniel Jones, or even if you're Drew Lock, and if you're Brian Daboll, frankly, coaching the team, you're in a position where Neighbors looks like he could be a great building block for the future, but he could have a good rookie season and it still might not force defenses into too many difficult situations. Because you guys know as well as I do, even when the Giants have struggled, and even when Barkley didn't play his best, defenses still had to scheme for him. And so now it's going to be pretty obvious, even though they have Jalen Hyatt, Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton's back, guys like that. They brought Devin Singletary in from the Houston Texans at running back. But by and large, Neighbors is going to be the obvious double team. And so it's really going to be on Daboll, who is expected to now call plays full time, to essentially try to trick the defensive coordinator down in and down out, and Daniel Jones, obviously, to make the plays.
So those are the weapons on the outside, but we know another part of the equation for Daniel's always been protection in New York. And when Andrew Thomas is healthy on that left side, he's been phenomenal. On the other side's where the questions start, and tackle was another position people thought the Giants might flirt with. We know Evan Neal still recovering from injury, but what can you tell us about the Giants' view of him still? And are they willing to keep going with that project to try and make him the guy opposite Andrew Thomas for the future?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up, because this was one of my primary takeaways from the spring. We just came out of mandatory minicamp with the Giants, 2 days there. And frankly, what I saw with my own eyes and doing my own reporting, Evan Neal has never looked more distant from the team. Now, yes, that is him rehabbing his left ankle, his surgeon telling him the rehab plan that he suggests, and he's following that. But they need him to improve and stay healthy for this offensive line to be competent. It's clear that they intend to give him the shot to win that job, to protect that job, because even though they signed Jermaine Illuminor, who was the starting right tackle for the Las Vegas Raiders last year, he comes with Carmen Brasillo, the new offensive line coach. Even though they signed Illuminor has been nailed at left guard, because that interior was just as much of a problem last year prior to them signing Justin Pugh and solidifying Ben Bredesen there. as the right tackle position with Evan Neal. So you've had Illuminor at left guard, John Runyon Jr., the free agent signing at right guard. And Runyon Jr. actually said he likes to play the left, but he's clearly there to try to give somebody, Evan Neal, somebody to lean on once we get to July, to September, to August. But frankly, guys, I look at what I haven't seen from Evan. He really hasn't done anything with the team other than some individual drills during the spring, and then he was backed off late. I look at that and I say it's hard to count on him, first of all. It's hard to feel confident about the plan, and they don't really have anything behind him. Josh Azudu is the swing tackle right now behind him. He struggled badly last year. He was actually the left tackle in an unfair situation to him, to be fair, but he was the left tackle on the play that Daniel Jones was sacked and hurt his neck in Miami.
How about on the other side of the ball, the defense, team that was the lower third or even lower, toward the bottom in total defense, really near the bottom in sacks, I think only 34. Is Brian Burns, is he going to need to be the savior to all of this, or do they need a little more help around that?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's up to their pass rush, Mike. He signs a 5-year, $141 million extension after the Giants give up a second-round pick in a trade for him. Now, he did just come from a team that couldn't score on offense. And so even though he's a good player, he wasn't able to really pin his ears back on defense. So the first thing that has to change is the Giants offense has to not be 30th in the league and averaging 15 points a game. So the defense can actually be in some obvious passing downs. They have assembled what looks like a potential strength there with Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, second team All-Pro. Kayvon Thibodeau, they want to see more out of, to your point, as far as the pressures, as far as getting there, as far as making these game-changing plays that he was making as a rookie. But really behind them, other than Bobby Okereke, the inside linebacker, which still stands as Joe Schoen's best acquisition so far going into year 3, their secondary is extremely young. And just to be frank, they have a lot of maybe 2s who are being asked to be 1s, or 3s being asked to be 2s. So there's opportunity for guys who want it, but they're learning a new scheme. And with all these new coaching staff, Shane Bowen running that defense, they're going to be playing a defense that, as Deonte Banks said himself, is less aggressive. And what he means by that is Wink Martindale, obviously we know he can throw the kitchen sink at quarterbacks and confuse them. Bowen's going to be more of a 4-man front, coverage in the back. So the priority will be tackling in the back after the catch, but also getting to the quarterback for the front. So it really is going to start and end with Lawrence, Thibodeau, Burns, and whoever else is paired with Lawrence in the interior to A, stop the run, and then B, get to the QB so there's not enough time to pick on the secondary.
Less aggressive might be the understatement of the century relative to what was there in New York. Only about a minute left here, Pat, but big picture, we've talked about the outlook on Daniel Jones' future with this team. For Brian Daboll and his job security, how big is this season? Is he someone who's on the hot seat right now?
Definitely. 10, 18, and 1 in his last 29 games. And given last year, how much of a part he played in the unfortunate dysfunction that happened really throughout the coaching staff. Some coaches were fired, many others left of their own accord. And so he's under pressure from ownership on down, not to mention the outside, not just to win games, but to compose himself on game days. While calling plays, he's also going to need to find a way to be a better game manager. Frankly, I think the pressure goes all the way up to general manager Joe Schoen if they have a season like they did last year. So there's a lot riding on this year for Daboll and Schoen, both personnel-wise and wins-wise. They have to get out to a great start. They have Minnesota and Washington weeks 1 and 2. So the opportunity is there, but they have to go do it.
Awesome stuff. You guys can check him out again, covering the Giants for the New York Daily News and the podcast Talking Ball with Pat Leonard over there. Check that out on the PL on NFL YouTube channel. Pat, always appreciate the time, man. Hopefully we'll talk to you again soon as we get closer to the season.
Look forward to it. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Pat.
And yeah, Dad, it's going to be interesting. Brian Daboll last year, everyone was waiting for them to make the shift offensively to more of a downfield passing attack. When you pay Daniel Jones that kind of money, trying to push the ball downfield after really that rushing attack led by Saquon Barkley in 2022 got them to where they wanted to go. Coming up next, we'll take a look around the rest of the NFL at some mini camps and potentially major problems popping up for some of your favorite teams here on GoJo and Golic.
NFL talk continues here on GoJo and Golic, and this time with minicamp, major problems. I'm going to run through a few scenarios and headlines coming out of NFL camp, and you guys tell me if it's a major problem or not, because like Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow said, quote, we don't have to be ready to go in the middle of June. We have to be ready to go early September through February. And he's a smart man. He's not wrong, but some issues, guys, don't magically go away. So let's start with the Chiefs and Travis Kelce, who of course has showed up year after year. And despite all of the doubters, the Chiefs go back to back with Super Bowls. That being said, that's a lot on Kelce's back.
Wear and tear me, baby. I'm ready for it, man. Put the load on me. I love being accountable for these the men and the women in this building and Chiefs Kingdom. I love the aspect of everybody counting on me to try and make that play for the team and just do the right things out there on the field and better judgment for the team. And I just I don't think that anything from last year put more miles on me, made me less of a player. I think it was all in all, it was just, focus, being my own worst critic, and capitalizing in situations that I should have.
So, GoJo, not the best receiving core, but you do have Travis Kelce and you do have Patrick Mahomes. Is this a major problem, though, that he's saying, I'm ready to take on this full load?
Yeah, Dad, I think the idea that Travis Kelce is your best weapon, considering how far along he is in his career and what that might entail, there's always some danger of it, but in general, I think what this Chiefs team has showed us during the Andy Reid's Patrick Mahomes era is they're pretty good at distributing touches enough until it's really time. Meaning during the regular season, we've seen them at the start of years lose games, look a little bit more human, look a little bit under the standard, and we wonder if they're going to be able to get back to the Super Bowl like they keep on doing. And it's usually because they use that early portion of the season to probe and figure things out. So you'd imagine you're going to see a lot of touches for Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown early on in the season, knowing full well that, hey, we're trying to figure out exactly what these pieces can do for us so that later on they can be the appropriate garnish around what's still the connection that defines this team. Patrick Mahomes to Travis Kelce is still ultimately the thing you hang your hat on when things matter most.
We kept trying to say all year, who are they going to throw to outside of Travis Kelce? How are they going to get this done? And at times it looked shaky. They had 12 receivers have 10 or more receptions. They had 9 receivers have 20 or more receptions. So they found a way to spread the ball out. They find a way because of Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. And quite honestly, Isaiah Pacheco, what he does in a running game, he was actually their third leading receiver behind Kelce and Rashee Rice. So I love what he does out of the backfield. So now you're actually adding to that with Xavier Worthy. You talked about Brown as well. So I just think it's volume and spreading the ball. Still, it's Kelce. There was worry at the beginning of the season. Kelce hyperextends his knee before the first game, doesn't play. They lose to Detroit by a point in a game we were out there at doing a show, and you go, uh-oh, and then who's their receiver? And they figure out it's Rashee Rice. They find a way, and they find a way because of Patrick Mahomes. So I will never, it's kind of like Alabama. I'm not going to say there's an issue with Alabama until we actually see an issue with Alabama. And, now we see Georgia had made their run at the top of college football. I'm not going to say there's something wrong with Kansas City until there's something wrong with Kansas City and somebody knocks them off, because that hasn't happened yet.
No, certainly not. I think for them too, you see this roster has great depth in the tight end room. We've seen them in the last 2 years use more 2 and 3 tight end sets than we have in a while. Some of that's helping out the offensive line. Wanye Morris, who's taken over right now as the starter at left tackle. Donovan Smith was there for the majority of last year, but Morris got, I think, 4 or 5 starts down the stretch of the season when Donovan Smith was dealing with injury. That's the thing that you've always got to worry about, is the pressure on Mahomes. That's the only time we've seen them undone. But in general, they've got a new group of weapons, and they've got 2 of them in Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy that both have speed to burn. And so I'm excited to see how this offense changes around those guys. In the past, it was figuring out, hey, what can you do with Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney as these sort of gadget players? The Chiefs, who were early on defined by their ability to stretch the field, might have a couple of guys that can actually help them do that again now that they've shown, hey, we can beat you underneath. Patrick Mahomes is willing to do a version of check down Charlie that's still very deadly for this team, especially when you can lean on the ground game and one of the best interior offensive lines in all of football, blocking for Isaiah Pacheco. So ultimately, no, I think all of this is mini camp for the Kansas City Chiefs. And like Dad said, until further notice, these guys are the champs, and you're going to have to go right through them if you want to get anywhere that's worth the damn. Claudia, let's head somewhere else in the AFC West to take a look at the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yes, Jim Harbaugh is finally realizing that he has a really good quarterback in Justin Herbert, who's heading into his 5th season. Take a listen.
The athleticism and the strength, really, I mean, he could play tight end here. He could play edge rusher here. And he can really, and the arm talent is even better than advertised. It's an exciting thing. I mean, I found myself just sitting at my desk at times and going, he's on our team,
Just everything he says is so entertaining. And he's so right. Every year I say Justin Herbert could be his MVP season. He puts the numbers up. The issue is now, yes, you have a great head coach, but you lost Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler. Those 3 accounted for 45% of the offensive yards. So, Senior, is this a major problem? You have a great coach and quarterback, but not the pieces around him.
As we'll sit there and talk about the offense. You just mentioned the pieces they lost. Now, Mike Williams missed a lot of the season with injury, but still, they lose those pieces. They try and replace them a little bit. I know they bring Gus Edwards in and a couple of tight ends as well. But their issues were also on defense. They have big issues on the defensive side of the ball that they have to deal with. This is a 5-win team that picked early in the draft and got Joe Alt to help on that offensive line, which he will. Mike, I do not see a good year at all. I don't care about how good Jim Harbaugh has been in the NFL, his coaching acumen. He just does not, in my opinion, have the horses on the offensive side of the ball outside of quarterback or the defensive side of the ball. We know, obviously, some of the rushers they have in Bosa and such, but that's just been a defense that gets run on. So I don't have a whole lot of hope for them to have a winning record by any stretch.
So Josh Palmer and Quentin Johnston, the 2 returning receivers with any sort of accolades to them, had only 38 receptions each last year in that season. You're going to pair them with Ladd McConkey, who they took in the 2nd round, who is a very good player, and I think despite being a guy named Ladd, who was a white guy on that Georgia roster that routinely remixed dudes in the SEC in a way that defied expectation when you looked at him. If he's healthy, he can absolutely be a difference maker for you. And I do think resetting the line of scrimmage foundation, Dad, that's one thing that Jim Harbaugh gets credit for. And if you can get Rashawn Slater to look like the guy that we saw before last year when he wasn't hampered by a little bit of injury and just underperforming, and Joe Alt to both play really well, you've invested first-round capital on that entire left side of the line, and now at right tackle, you've got 3 former first-round picks on that offensive line. So for Greg Roman and company, there's great clay to work with up front to reset that foundation. I don't think the expectation is you to be a playoff team this year necessarily if you're the Chargers, because you're right. I just think the cupboard's too bare with the skill guys. But you mentioned Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa both took a pay cut to stick around there. Now, they both came out and said the right things, that they believe this team can be a winner. They wanted to stick around here and do all that. Who knows what the actual logistics of that situation were, but both of those guys did take a bite off of that, as we saw veteran players on that roster fall on the chopping block when this new regime came in here. So I agree. Run game or defense, let's put it this way, Dad. Jim Harbaugh alone worth a little bit when it comes to your idea of what's going to happen in the run game defensively. The new Jesse Minter, the new defensive coordinator, fresh off of his stint at Michigan with Jim Harbaugh there, and schematically, structurally, what they did there, incredible NFL level stuff, much more akin to, let's say, the Mike Macdonald coaching trees, because remember, Mike Macdonald bounced back and forth between Michigan and there. Minter was with John Harbaugh in Baltimore as well. Than his predecessor and what we saw from a scheme that was more Vic Fangio. So it was that too high. It was a lot lighter boxes. It was less of a priority on the run game outside of a few guys in the box being able to stop it. I do think they're going to put more resources towards that and structurally be in a lot better position to go out there and stop the run than they were with Brandon Staley as the head coach.
Yeah, listen, they're going to have to be. No doubt about it. They can get after the passer. They had, 48 sacks, I think, much different than what we just talked about with the Giants, with Khalil Mack and with Bosa getting after the quarterback. But I'm with you. This is not a playoff team now. It's a build. It's a get Harbaugh type of players in there to the type of team that they want. It's just a matter of how quickly you can do it, because we know the lifeline isn't all that long in the NFL.
No, certainly not. Claudia, do you have the win total for the Chargers up there? I didn't see that before.
Well, I was just going to say, to miss the playoffs, no is -130, so they are favored. I can look up the win total right now, though. Do we have any guesses?
Yeah, they had 5 last year. I'm going to say 6
here we go.
and a half,
Los Angeles Chargers win totals 8.5 this year, and it's
no.
juiced to the over.
Yeah.
So
there you go.
I'm not going the over on that one. I think they had just too many holes to fill. Now, let's see. Maybe the holes get filled and they start the chemistry right away. But yeah, I'm gonna take a pass on that over.
+130 for the under, senior. That's some good plus money there.
See, there you go. There you go. Always looking for that plus money.
All right, Claudia, let's take a look at the Eagles. What do we got here?
Yes, looking to reclaim the crown in the NFC East, struggled down the stretch. So how are head coach Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts turning the page? Take a listen.
What have you noticed about, Nick being open-minded to change up the offense like he has? I mean, what does that say about him?
I mean, it's a great question. I don't know that I know the answer to it.
Well, what have you seen? What have you seen from him as far as doing that?
I think he's just, he's been great, and the messages he's delivering to the team. He's trying to be very intentional in what he's saying, and yeah.
It kind of sounds like a major problem to me. Their win total at DraftKings, 10.5. Under is juice -125. Yeah, GoJo, that doesn't sound great.
Yeah, listen, man, I understand that every once in a while you get caught with a question you're not ready for, but waxing poetic about your head coach at a critical juncture, Dad, should be a pretty easy assignment for your star quarterback who you just paid $250 million to stick the landing on there. So, yeah, I mean, and this goes back to last year. This isn't smoke from a new fire, right? The end of last season, we had concerns and there were questions about Jalen Hurts certainly in that locker room and his standing there. And Nick Sirianni, the guy who's been more like a cartoon character of a head coach with the way that he's gone about it, someone who's been brash, who's gone out there and taunted opposing fan bases, who's leaned into being the Philadelphia guy. And we know with every team, it's about how well your star player and coach connect. And this quote, I mean, again, usually we're bad body language experts and stuff like that in sports media, but I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to see this is kind of weird.
Yeah, that was kind of weird. I mean, that was, wow. I don't know what to say. I guess all I can say is it's June. Let's see how much better at least the talk can get. Because from a team aspect, Mike, how do you not like what they have, right? I mean, you lose Kelce, I get it, on the O-line, but your O-line is still a top-notch O-line. You got Brown and Smith that you re-signed, Goddard at tight end. You bring in Saquon Barkley. I mean, your defense loses Fletcher Cox, who had been, playing like he was a little older, and it's time for the young guys, Carter and Davis, to really take over on the interior there. So they really messed up their defense. They didn't put anything into linebacker last year. Secondary had some injuries, so they had some issues on defense they need to square away. But I certainly love the talent on this team. Again, now Jalen Hurts is on his third offensive coordinator and Kellen Moore this year in the last 3 years, and they're also on their third defensive coordinator as well. That doesn't bode well. A couple of years ago, you lost them both to head coaching jobs. Last year, you fire them both and move on to new ones. So that's a little iffy there. But from a talent level that we're talking about, and the teams we've talked about, Kansas City, we know, has the talent. New York, we think was going to struggle a bit with talent. The Chargers got rid of a lot of their talent. The Eagles have a lot of talent, and they should be right there contending for that division title.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing I fall back onto with these guys is like, man, I understand Kellen Moore, we may have gone too fast to him as the next head coaching wonderkind, and maybe some of the bloom is off the rose now in terms of what we think he affords you, but we know he's going to do more for you pre-snap than the Eagles were doing for Jalen Hurts in this offense last year, where it just felt like it was, hey man, y'all got this, go make it happen. NFL defenses and defensive coordinators are too good to do that consistently and not expect people to catch up, especially when your quarterback got hurt and wasn't a viable run threat for the majority of the season last year. So offensively, yeah, they got talent through the gills, and defensively, they went out there and they made adds at every position that was an issue last year. Brought over Devin White at linebacker from Tampa Bay. Got Bryce Huff in there on defense from the Jets, albeit that was kind of a swap with Hassan Redick, but, get it how you live. Defensively in the backfield, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, you draft Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. You went down the spine of this defense and on the perimeter where you had issues last year, and you brought in high-level talent in some form or another. And so for the Philadelphia Eagles, you combine that with Vic Fangio, who's an adult in the room on the defensive side of the ball, and I don't know how this team isn't markedly better than they were at the end of last season. Maybe they're not a team, Dad, that I would expect to go out there and win a Super Bowl anymore with the core of this roster, how it's aged in some spots, but they're going to be much better than they were at the end of last year. That seems unavoidable given the changes that they made. They were intentional about everything that was a problem for them.
Yeah, they were. I give them credit for that. I mean, Jalen Hurts had that interception year that Dak Prescott had the year before, ended up with 15 interceptions, and how they just folded at the end of the year. Everybody, don't just put it on Jalen. So, we talk about the AFC being the deep conference, and the NFC, it was basically San Francisco. Now Detroit is making that run. Who are some of the other teams? Is it still Dallas? I think Dallas maybe takes a step back. Is it Green Bay with Jordan Love with a year under his belt? Are they a team that's going to make a move? I'm trying to think of the depth of the NFC, of why Philadelphia can't be right near the top if they can put it together.
They certainly could be. And to go back to the minicamp or major problem with this and Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts, I would ultimately still say minicamp, because at this point, Nick Sirianni once again has ceded play calling control. Kellen Moore is going to have the sticks in his hand. And so you need Jalen Hurts to be on the same page as Kellen Moore now. You need those guys to be speaking the same language. And we saw the quote the other week that 95% of this offense is different. It's going to require more before the snap than he's used to. It's going to require more under center than he's used to. And so as long as him and Kellen Moore can communicate through a lot of what's going on there, because that Kelce part that you mentioned, Dad, that to me is more from the neck up than it is from the actual play on the field. Jason Kelce is like having a quarterback play in front of you on the offensive line. And by all accounts, he was able to take a lot of that load off of Jalen Hurts, which, hey, this isn't all that unfamiliar, right? I remember growing up and watching those pieces on Peyton Manning and Jeff Saturday, how those two guys used to go and watch film together because they wanted to see everything through the same set of eyes so that they could go out there and have a conversation at the line of scrimmage that ultimately, in pretty much every offense, the quarterback gets final say on, because it's his body on the line, because he's the one that knows the full scope of the play. But for a lot of these guys at the high level, it is a give and take between those two positions in particular. Cam Jurgens is stepping into that role for the first time. And I don't know his aptitude. I know he's a guy that Jason Kelce kind of helped scout and handpick coming out of college, who's been learning from him in that room with one of the best offensive line coaches in the business. But a lot more is going to fall on Jalen Hurts and the quarterback in a new offense. And so how he takes to that with Kellen Moore matters a lot more to me than whatever quote he can muster up about Nick Sirianni.
Yeah, I would agree, even though that was a weird presser. At this point, I would take Philly to win the division over Dallas. I don't know about you, but that's where I would go. I just think while both teams have talent, I just think Philly has a little bit more talent. So I would lean toward them right now.
It's going to be interesting for me. I think so much of that hinges on what Dallas's offensive line is able to muster up right now. Tyron Smith gone from there, how they're going to negotiate this with their young draft picks, where they're going to employ Tyler Smith, and how that holds up, because Dak Prescott's the better quarterback of these two teams. Yes. I firmly believe coming off last year, just their whole body of work. Obviously, Jalen had a stellar run, including that trip to the Super Bowl in 2022 that helped earn him the big-time contract extension. But when you look at their overall body of work and what Dak Prescott was able to do last year, back again, and Mike McCarthy, we talk about an offensive system that's not going to afford you much in the way of pre-snap motion and creating easier looks for guys. Dak Prescott fit the ball into a lot of really tight windows. He attacks the hell out of the seams and makes his team better. So I think they've got the better quarterback. They've got the better game-breaking player on defense in Micah Parsons too. And so I still lean Dallas a little bit right now. But as Joe Burrow said, I don't got to make those picks right now in June. We're going to worry about those picks in August and September as we get ready to go for all of that. Coming up next, who doesn't love a good summer blockbuster? And even a sequel mixed in now and then. So coming up, we will revisit some of the headlines previously from GoJo and Golic yesterday, including The one we should have all seen coming. I have never felt dumber than I did last night, and I'll tell you exactly why next here on GoJo and Golic.
Very dramatic. Very ominous, very dramatic.
You're done.
If you're not watching on DraftKings Network or YouTube, that said previously on GoJo and Golic. So some of the topics that we talked about yesterday, but we felt we need to dig a little bit deeper into. And I think one of the more important at the top here is the fact that Joey Chestnut is not allowed to eat hot dogs on the 4th of July, which is just an American sin. So we had Major League Eating Nick Weary come on to talk about it yesterday. And now we get the news that Chestnut is going to be having a live contest on Netflix with the retired Kobayashi. GoJo, this is your world. What does this mean?
Dad, I felt exactly like Ralphie did in The Christmas Story.
Yep.
Where you go through all this and you spend all this time and emotion on going to get it, and then you get the Drink More Ovaltine, a crummy commercial.
Yeah,
we were duped and had all of this in an effort to promote towards this event. And to be clear, it's going to work. I'm going to watch because, again, much like we talked about with the Boston Celtics series with the Dallas Mavericks, talent always wins. And you've got the two best competitive eaters of our lifetime in Kobayashi and Joey Chestnut. You've got the rivalry that dominated the sport for a long stretch of time, now kicking off on September 2nd. So they are going to do a hot dog eating contest between the two of them live on Netflix Monday, September 2nd. And, Dad, I think it was smart for them not to go up against the 4th of July and the Nathan's Famous hot dog contest in this, out of some maybe respect for the franchise and Major League Eating that's helped them both. But this is absolutely going to be box office from two people that we haven't seen eat against each other in quite some time.
And it's right the week before the NFL season begins, so they didn't mess with the NFL, which would be a bad move anyway. I'm with you, Mike. How did we not see this coming? I mean, absolutely flew over our heads. I cannot wait. I think this is going to be absolutely fantastic. What a great way to go about this. It's been, 15 years, 16 years for these guys in the rivalry. The last time they had it at the Nathan's hot dog eating contest. So this is awesome. I'm going to watch it. Kudos to Netflix. Man, they're coming out strong, aren't they? With events, the roast you had. I mean, they were going to do the Tyson and Jake Paul fight that's got postponed. Hopefully that happens at some point. They're doing a couple of Christmas games now for the NFL. They are coming in strong for some of these sporting events, and I will be all eyes on this one-on-one hot dog eating contest matchup.
Yeah, Dan, I think you put it best there. Netflix has been getting their reps in right now, and it's all culminating in now what's starting to happen with them in the NFL broadcast. But, God, I can remember watching the Love is Blind live reunion go horribly wrong for them, where there were massive technical delays, and you wondered if Netflix was ever going to do live stuff again. And now they're making sure they get all this in because they've got money to burn, and they said, hey, maybe we can take some of this money and instead of throwing it at Adam Sandler or Dave Chappelle for a little bit, we can go and throw it at the only thing that continues to draw eyeballs live consistently, and that is sports. And so getting reps in at broadcasting events like this seems like good business if you're a group that's now going to be broadcasting stuff with the biggest league in North American sports. So it seems smart all around, but man, I just feel really dumb. We should have seen this coming. And this all but ensures that we're probably not going to see Joey eating hot dogs on the 4th of July because as Nick Weary talked about, the idea of peaking twice in the middle of your training probably seems like bad business if you're going to try and go out here and waylay Kobayashi.
I guess that's true. I knew it had something to do with PR, though. Like, it had to be a PR stunt. I didn't realize it would be this, and I also didn't realize you can't have two competitions that close to each other because, I don't know, I feel like I overeat, like, every day in a row, but I'm also not in Major League Eating senior.
We if you say you do, me and Mike do as well, but you have to do it at a competitive level. You have to pick your spot. So I agree, Mike, because we all thought, even talking with Nick Weir yesterday, could they work something out before the Nathan's hot dog contest on July 4th? But now you're right. July, that's 2 months. Just a hair less than 2 months before this big matchup. So yeah, you don't want to try and do that twice. I want to know how long this, because I feel as dumb as you, Mike, how long this has been going on, the talk of this, the negotiation for this contest, how long this has been in the works.
Well, remember, Kobayashi came out a while ago and said he was retiring for health reasons. Yes. That was something big that came up, and now we get the quotes here, retiring for me will only happen after I take him down one last time. So that probably means they got offered a bleep ton of money to go make this happen, and the rest is history.
And you wonder if because we hadn't heard his name in how long, and all of a sudden he's out there saying he's retiring, so now his name's back out there again, and then here we go with the matchup. So beautifully done. Well done, Netflix. Kudos to you. Tip of the cap and an applause because you will have plenty of people sitting down watching that.
Well, speaking of sitting down watching, this is a new little audible we're going to call in the middle of this one because last time on GoJo and Golic, we had spent a ton of time talking about the saga between Woj and Shams and JJ Redick or potentially Danny Hurley as the coach for the Los Angeles Lakers. The update that we just got here about 20 minutes ago from Adrian Wojnarowski, ESPN sources saying J.J. Redick will formally interview for the Los Angeles Lakers coaching job this weekend, and a strong performance is expected to move him to the forefront of the franchise's search. Dad, I don't know what all the clever wording means there about a strong performance. I don't know what other kind of options the Lakers are going to have at this point right now. We've seen that they have clearly established themselves as further down in the hierarchy of jobs this offseason than I think even they realized. And so J.J. Redick, if he's got any interest in doing this right now, if Mind the Game, his podcast with LeBron, has truly been an extended job interview, I'd say he's ready to nail the only part that matters, which is you want to come and hang out with LeBron and try and squeeze the last bit out of the career of one of the all-time greats.
Well, also, think about the people sitting on the other side. When you lost out on the man you wanted in Dan Hurley, however that went, however it went. Now you have assistant coaches who the thought is there may be better jobs available, i.e. Cleveland with the roster and the way the NBA is going right now. So guys who have coached to, as I just said yesterday, to a coach maybe that doesn't have options, to a potential coach in JJ Redick who has never been a coach. If you don't have options and you want to get into this business, then, you're going to jump at opportunities. Now, not to say that this isn't a great opportunity to jump out with the Lakers, even though we have talked about the roster and all that. It's still, you're a first-time head coach. That's a hell of a spotlight on you right out of the gate. But not only do I think he would nail the interview very well, but at this point, the people listening on the Lakers side, they may hear things in a different tone and come out of even more like, yeah, this is our guy, because the other guys that they were going after don't seem to be as interested. So let's sound really interested about this guy. Or if he says something that we kind of like, what we hear is we really like it because we need him to be our guy and express that he's our guy and actually have that person take the job. So it looks like we got a guy we actually wanted.
Exactly. This is going to be we got our guy that we wanted all along, even as we know. Danny Hurley and Adrian Wojnarowski's article on ESPN.com says JJ Redick understood that the Lakers' pursuit of Danny Hurley stalled his own candidacy and understands the game with that. It seems like James Borrego, the Pelicans assistant, who's also mentioned in this, things are starting to progress more with him in Cleveland. And so the game of musical chairs for the Los Angeles Lakers really doesn't have a ton of contestants. Apparently, according to Woj, Rob Pelinka and JJ Redick talked for about 90 minutes at the draft combine in Chicago the other weekend. They had about a 90-plus minute visit there, but this is going to be the more extended version where, Dad, I think we're really just kind of hammering out some of the finer-tuned details and giving JJ Redick a chance to state his case while he's not also trying to call games for ESPN and do his various media jobs.
Yeah, you just wonder, will it still be a 6-year, $70 million deal, which the supposed massive offer that was coming to Danny Hurley was nowhere near a massive offer coming to Danny Hurley. So I highly doubt that JJ Redick will go in as the 6th highest paid head coach in the NBA. Not to say that that's the end-all be-all for a guy that's going to be a first-time head coach, but I think that the money scales down.
Yep, we can talk a lot more about that in coming days and what that tends to look like. But JJ Redick and the Los Angeles Lakers, it appears, heading towards their more extended interview this weekend after the Celtics go out and likely take care of business and finish this series off in the sweep in the NBA Finals that JJ's been calling, which, oh, by the way, are they going to add someone else in that booth with Mike Breen and Doris Burke now that they've had 2 other analysts leave this season to go coach in the NBA? We'll see. Coming up next, though, big-time slate in the W this weekend. We'll preview that next on GoJo and Golic.
GoJo and Golic with eyes on the WNBA now more than ever. We have a great slate of games this week, but also this weekend, a WNBA Finals rematch between the Aces and Liberty, who do have those top 2 spots in the odds to win it all. And then we also have Caitlin Clark and the Fever taking on the Chicago Sky. To break all that down and more, GoJo, we are joined by a special guest.
Yes, Terrika Foster-Brasby, kind enough to join us now, WNBA analyst and reporter, a good friend of ours. And T, I just first and foremost want to check in and see how you've survived all of this Caitlin Clark Olympic Team USA drama that's gone on here. Have you ever seen anything like this mess?
I am not surviving. That's why I'm in Las Vegas right now. I need a break. But I've never, ever, I've never seen anything like this before, which in a way is a good thing. That means people are talking about the league. That means, controversy, drama that sells. But at the same time, I really need new fans and old fans to be realistic about what we're talking about here. It's Team USA. They've never historically cared about marketing or anything like that. Popularity does not matter to them. You have no idea what you're going to get when you turn on the Olympic channel. You could be watching diving, you could be watching track and field, or you could be watching basketball. So, I think folks need to just calm down just a little bit.
Yeah, completely agree with that. And there's more to get to with Caitlin, which we will. But let's actually start this out with basketball in the W. And you mentioned where you are. What the hell's going on with the Aces? Losing 3 in a row, such a dominant team, and now looking average.
Yeah, that's a very great question. There are a couple of things that I think are just a little bit concerning, but not so much to the point where I am losing my mind in June about the Aces going on a 3-game losing streak. Number one, they're still playing without their point guard, Chelsea Gray, and she is such an important piece to this Aces team. Now, she is listed as questionable for their upcoming matchup, which is a positive because she's been unavailable since she injured her foot last year in the finals. So this is a good thing to see. Maybe she'll get in and get a couple of reps in. Maybe that will help center and focus this team. But having her out has really played a large part in where they are right now. The other thing is they aren't really playing defensively the way that we've been accustomed to seeing them play. Minus Asia Wilson, who's the defending defensive player of the year, they have moments where they have defensive breakdowns and collapses. So that's not going well for them. And then lastly, they're not really getting any help. Outside of Asia and a few starters, they're not really getting any help offensively. So teams around them, if you guys have noticed, which I know you have, the league has gotten better over the year. The talent has gotten better over the year. And so, things that worked last year aren't really working this year when everyone around you has upped their game. So Las Vegas will be fine, but it's a little bit of a struggle right now.
As you mentioned, that talent gap closing, which team do you think's been the biggest example of that's made that jump this year in the W?
For sure, Minnesota. The Minnesota Lynx is the team that has, I always thought that this would be a year where they would improve, or they would learn to gel better, play better. They made some moves in the offseason, adding Courtney Williams to their team. I'm like, okay, give them a couple months to get it together. They were undefeated up until seeing Connecticut. They were a team who literally just gave Las Vegas their last loss. They're a team who's coming in every game, and Nafisa Collier is playing like an MVP. So realistically, we'll see what they look like in August. No, they look really good right now. And they're only going to get better. Teams are only going to get better as the season progresses. So for sure, they're a team to me that will absolutely be in the conversation as the season goes on, as a contender.
I know we're only about 12, 13 games into this season for the rookies, but how do you look at this rookie class compared to some of the other great rookie classes the W has seen?
Well, this isn't a popular opinion, but I'm going to say it anyway. I don't necessarily think this is a great rookie class. I think this is a popular rookie class. And that's a big difference, right? We've seen some rookie classes, I think, that have come in and have been like, wow, this is an incredible group. 2018 is one that sticks to mind where I'm like, wow, this is a really great group. This is a group that I think we're going to see really be stars. And we're seeing that. However, However, this is a popular rookie class, and I love that. I love their popularity. I love that it helps to bring eyes to the game, but they are still rookies and they're still transitioning. I love what I'm seeing out of Cameron Brink. I want her to be a bit more disciplined so that she can stop fouling out, but I love girl, if she can figure out how to play that kind of defense without fouling, she's going to be a maniac under the rim, and I absolutely love that. But I love what I'm seeing from her. I love what I'm seeing from Angel Reese. She's doing what it is that she needed to do for Chicago, which is crash the boards, which is be a rebounding machine. She's doing that. I love to see her development under Teresa Weatherspoon. I'm not disappointed in Caitlin Clark at all. I think she again is doing it as best as she possibly can. Are there things that she still needs to work on? Absolutely. But I mean, it's only 13, 14 games in the season. She's played the toughest schedule of anybody else because Indiana has had so many games early on, and all of them have been under a microscope because almost every game has been publicly or nationally televised. So it's a little difficult to kind of find your rhythm and make mistakes and do things that rookies do when everybody's watching every single mistake that you make. Like, you don't have the time to really figure things out on the fly. You need practice time. Well, they didn't have practice time for a while because they had a game every other day. You need, to be able to have coaches tell you what you're going to be able to work on. Well, she didn't have Christy to do that for a while because, run-throughs don't really, you're former athletes, you guys know run-throughs don't really give you the same, simulation as being in a real game. So, but she will be fine. I think this rookie class is going to be Camila Cardoso. How could I forget her? She looks so good now, especially with Elizabeth Williams being out for an unlimited amount of time for Chicago. So they're coming along fine.
Yeah, those rookie twin towers for the Chicago Sky looking very, very good so far, like you just mentioned here. And we look at the top of this. We talked about the Aces matchup with the New York Liberty this weekend. They're just below in the standings the Connecticut Sun. Who do you think is the best team in the W right now, especially between those two?
Well, I mean, not to be biased, I covered the Sun. However, I do think that right now, the hottest team is New York. The best team is still Connecticut. Connecticut isn't even playing their best basketball. They're still struggling offensively, and yet their defense is so dominating that it's keeping them in games. And that's a good thing at this point. I mean, obviously you want to be able to, match that offensive production that you get on the defensive end. But quite honestly, if you're getting this kind of performance defensively that has you at a 10-1 record already or 11-1 already, and you haven't even begun to click offensively, and there's still 2 months of the season left, you got to feel good about where you are. Historically, that just, this record would solidify Connecticut a spot in the WNBA finals. So we'll see if they, if history repeats itself as it has with the others. But I think New York looks really good as well. They are on a 7-game win streak right now. They are starting to look like the New York team from the finals last year, and they still are playing without their guard and Courtney Vandersloot. So it should be an interesting matchup with New York and Las Vegas this weekend, where New York looks kind of like their old self and Las Vegas looks nothing like themselves.
So literally 30 seconds ago, and I'm going to put you on the spot in 30 seconds. Chelsea Gray hasn't played yet this year. Let's just say she can't make the Olympic team as a guard. Who fills the spot? Caitlin Clark, Arike Ogunbowale, or somebody else?
It should be Arike Ogunbowale. Jen Rosati is the president. Jen Rosati is on the selection committee, and she made a statement recently where she says we're putting together the best team, not the most popular one. And if that is the case, then the best person to fill that spot would be Arike Ogunbowale. She's earned it. She's had some time to gel with the team before. She's put in her dues. She would be the best fill-in for me.
We agree. Domer, yes.
Yes, exactly. I would say we are all aboard the Terriika Ogunbowale train here, and we are all aboard the Terrika Foster-Brasby train. T, always appreciate your time. Enjoy Vegas, and we'll talk to you soon. All right, friend?
Thanks, guys.
All right, coming up next, we finish this thing off with a big-time Buc-ee's investment, something that we can all get behind. Next on GoJo and Golic. All right, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you into the rest of the day. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out here live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. If you miss us there, you can catch the best of GoJo and Golic from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern, wherever you hear VSiN on the radio. And God forbid you miss it either of those places, and I really hope you don't. But if you do, you can catch us and our great guests like Pat Leonard of the New York Daily News covering the Giants, or Terrika Foster-Brasby covering the WNBA, wherever you get us and get your podcast, as well as right here on YouTube as soon as we get done. And speaking of social media platforms, guys, let's get to this. Yesterday, big news out there for people that don't fully understand the platforms that they exist on a lot. Twitter, or X now, even though I'm not calling it X, not even if there's a fire, will now hide the likes on your page. It used to be a tab that you could go to on almost anyone's profile that would show you what they liked. And in the past, we have seen athletes, members of sports media like ourselves and others, fall victim to this, I won't even say cruel trick, something that everybody should have known that they didn't, and like a bunch of weird porn and have that become the story on the timeline for a while. And so now you're still going to be able to see the post that you've liked. You're still going to be able to see the people that have liked your post, but it won't show up for anybody else now. And so, Dad, there's a lot of very horned up individuals that are very going to much breathe a sigh of relief now that their business is not going to be out in the streets.
Absolutely no idea what you're talking about. No clue. What? So explain it to me in a way I can understand.
So, Dad, basically, yeah, so when you go on Twitter, you can like something, you can retweet it, you can quote tweet it as you're often want to do. And in the past, when you used to like posts, it would also show up on the timeline. It was one of the ways where, hey, if someone you follow likes a post, you might see, oh, Twitter will show me so-and-so, Mike Golic Sr. liked this post about brisket. And I'd be like, oh, Dad liked to post about brisket. That's cool. Other times, you might look up and see, oh, such and such coach in the NBA liked this Instagram model's butt picture. I don't know if that's something he necessarily knew was the case out here. And so now Elon Musk, who is basically just making smut legal on Twitter now and has helped the influx of porn bots get to a level that I never thought was humanly possible on that website, seems to just be covering his own ass on this. It's all very confusing. But now, basically, no one will know what anybody else likes on Twitter anymore.
So basically, see if I have this right, butts on Instagram will be liked more now.
Just Twitter.
I mean, Twitter.
No, yeah, butts on Twitter will be liked more now by people that previously were worried that maybe people in their lives, significant others, coworkers might see the butts that they were liking.
Okay.
Claudia, does that sound about right as the other person that's internet literate on this show?
It does, for sure. I just don't understand why men why, what does it do? You think she's going to see that you liked her tweet and be like, oh, I want this man now? I never understood why dudes do that. Like when boyfriends like other girls' posts, like, what do you think that's doing for you? So yes, sure, it helps the weirdo creepers out there, but I mean, we're all respectable people here, so we don't have to worry about it.
I think it's like when guys go into a strip joint, they think all the girls are going to fall in love with them somehow, some way.
Yeah, it's just
here. When all they want is that dollar bill or that $5 or that $20 you got in your hand. So, wow, that's okay. So basically, it's going to up the porn value on Twitter.
But it's already terrible, so I don't. Basically, it's just protecting people so they can be freaky and whatever.
I'm glad I just repost. Repost with a comment. That's it.
This website continues to descend further and further into hell. And yet, we're still out here getting these tweets off. I know some of you might leave. That's fine. You're going to go. I've said it. I'm going to be here till the end of all of it. And now it's just going to be a little bit less entertaining because every once in a while, Awful Announcing won't be able to run a piece about how someone in sports media liked a bunch of porn. So from that, Claudia, to actually that here, Father's Day coming up this weekend here, and someone's looking forward to an extra special celebration.
Yes, Nick Cannon wants to give all 11 of his kids, 11, the opportunity to connect with him on Father's Day. So people tweeted that out, speaking of Twitter, and Chili's retweeted this saying, getting our biggest booth ready. Supportive, sort of shots fired, but I mean, it's funny, Senior.
I don't know what to say here. 11 kids. He says he's looking forward to getting everybody together to for a day filled of love and gifts, which he will get. I don't know where to go on this one. 11 kids he's getting together. I think there's between 5 or 6 different women he has the kids. And listen, if they all have a great relationship, then more power to them all. Then so be it. But boy, oh boy, that's going to have to be an awfully big booth to hold all that. I think you need a room. You need one of the private rooms. I don't think Chili's has a private room. So you just need to section something off there if that's where you're going to go.
Mm-hmm.
Section, not the sex that's led to all this for Nick Cannon. It is always interesting to me how these people get faunted too. Like Nick Cannon obviously has had a bunch of different roles over the year, from musician to actor, and now instead has the title of Masked Singer host Nick Cannon, which is what the majority of people know him for at this point, even also to go along with being the Antonio Cromartie of pop culture in terms of fathering basically the entire future of the human race here. So, no, good for him. And look, listen, he's got the right idea, Dad. He understands, hey, this is a great time for me now because that many kids. It's like when you hear children of divorce all the time. It was in Talladega Nights when the kids found out that his parents were getting divorced, and they said 2 Christmases. Nick Cannon was really just saving this all up for 12 different rounds of presents for Father's Day, likely bought with his money.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it'll be interesting, the array of gifts he's going to get here. So, hey, kudos. Hope they have a great time. Kudos to them. Hope they have fun. Hope all is well there. I really got nothing more than that.
And so all the baby mamas just go and hang out too, and they're just whatever.
Listen,
Chili's a great place for that too.
I can't even pretend to project the dynamics of all of that.
We can't understand.
So it's best that I just don't say anything at all.
That's fair.
Film it. That's all we ask is film it. This is content and dystopian. Claudia, let's finish up with the third and on a good note here. Buc-ee's doing big things, literally, figuratively, spiritually.
Yes, and not sexually. But they opened the largest store in Texas. $40 million. $40 million, 75,000 square feet, 120 gas pumps, 200 plus employees. It's the 50th store, 36 in Texas. I need to get myself to one of these. This might be the one, guys. Senior, I got to get there.
It is a place that you can just shop. I mean, it's one of those stops that give yourself some time. I wish we could have spent more time when Chris and I were driving the dogs. We stopped at the one in Missouri, but we had the dogs there. We couldn't go in too long. But you can spend some time there. Take your time. Check it out. I can't fathom this one. And still, Mike, I am amazed that they don't have truckers there, at least pumps. You see the trucks, the 18-wheelers will line up outside of it and park outside of it and go in, but they don't offer them gas or anything. They don't want that, that in there as well. That amazes me for how big this is going to be. But Buc-ee's is an absolute treasure that everybody needs to experience.
I'm not going to lie, that kind of disappointed me about the 18-wheelers. I think taking care of our long-haul truckers and providing them with comforts on the road is something that we should take seriously at a lot of these rest stops. I know the big rest stop in Iowa that everyone talks about, it has awesome amenities for the truck drivers out there and takes good care of them. So would love to see that in the future. If you're wondering, Luling, Texas is on like the highway stretch in between San Antonio and Austin. So if you're going between those two and you've got to chance out this monstrosity, do the right thing. Get yourself some brisket. Get yourself some of the beef jerky at the counter there, and make sure you go into the bathroom. Use it for whatever you need to there. Some of the best, cleanest, and finest bathrooms I've ever been a part of.
Normally, when you're doing a rest stop, you always go in. Whether you have to go a little or go a lot, you're going to go. So I think everybody. I'm just saying,
try and time it up. Maybe hit that coffee right before you go in, so you really get the full brunt of the experience.
I got to do the beef jerky next time. I didn't do that because we stopped there at like 9 a.m. Next time around, I'm going to get a big array of beef jerky.
Make sure you get a picture with Buc-ee the mascot. Lord knows I did. If you enjoy listening to us when you are in a Buc-ee's rest stop bathroom, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review, and let us know about it. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.